please give a warm welcome to the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Labor, Keith Sonderling, and he is joined by the Senior Vice President of Global AI Markets,
I was going to say,
Keith Strier.
Normally don't get that much excitement about
that's amazing.
Department of Labor, but I'll take it.
Well, I think it's the two New York lawyers
Yes.
coming to speak at a conference. I mean, it's how often do you see that on stage, right? That's really great. Well, thank you for coming, and Deputy Secretary, thank you for coming. We have just a few minutes to cover a really big topic, so I think we should go into it. And we should start, though, by maybe doing a little history lesson, because I mean, there's no shortage of headlines on the role of AI today in transforming the workplace. But you didn't just start in this position. You actually have a really interesting career that spans several years as the commissioner of the EEOC and even other roles at the Labor Department before that. So you've been sort of in this sort of mindset for a while. But most importantly, as I recall, because I've known you for a few years, you made a very deliberate choice several years ago to start putting AI on your agenda. It wasn't necessarily a national priority as much yet. It wasn't a decree, quite frankly, from the White House. You made a very personal decision to lean in to AI, and I think that set the stage for the role that you're now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So it's very important to kind of take a look back in the workforce field about the AI's impact. And we'll talk a lot about the issues going on right now. But when I started my journey in AI, in human resources, in the workforce, it was really non-existent. And when I first heard about it, when I was going through my Senate confirmation process to be my former role, the Commissioner of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which is the regulator for human resources, I started hearing about AI in the workplace, and like many, my mind went to this dystopian vision of these robot armies completely displacing workers. And I said, with everything going on in the workplace, we're still dealing with the Me Too movement, pay equity, all these big ticket items you would expect a labor regulator to deal with. I don't have the capacity to deal with rights for robots.
Yeah.
And then I realized, as I started digging into it, it was nothing about that.
Yeah.
And what I found was, and this was early on, this was right around pre-pandemic times, that even at the time, companies were using AI to actually make workplace decisions. Not where we are about that conversation we'll have about displacing workers, but actually using artificial intelligence to make all types of HR decisions that HR leaders were making, like who to interview, who to hire, what to set their salary is. And if you look at A to Z of what HR leaders do or the employment relationship, there was AI software being developed at the time just to deal with the mass influx of people applying for jobs, online resumes. So this has been going on in our space for a long time, and I was one of the first ones to say, we have to tackle this, and we have to tackle this now, because no matter who you are, if you're applying for a job, if you're entering the workforce, if you're alive and going to get a job, you're going to be subject to some AI in that employee lifespan you have. So we started making it a priority very early on.
Yeah, so that was a very deliberate choice, and that gave you exposure to these topics, right? And so now you jump ahead. It's now 2024. You're kind of winding down that role. You've had a really great run. You've earned a lot of respect among the different stakeholders in the economy. President Trump comes into office. And he's looking around, and he's going to build his new team and administration, and your name comes up as an important person to be considered as part of the go forward the administration because of the work that you did. So now you're here, you're in this position, and now you're really in a position to truly influence the country. And now it's very interesting. They talk about today, if you're a CEO today, and if you're lucky, you're fortunate to be a CEO today, you're the last generation of CEOs that will only have humans working for you. That all workforces going forward will be blended. You will have a combination of human and digital labor, right? And this sets the stage for a very different kind of administration. I mean, can you talk about that?
Yeah, no, exactly what you said, coming into this role now, where normally you would be dealing with the normal workforce issues at the cabinet level, dealing with all workforce development, workforce planning, unemployment insurance, OSHA, health and safety. Now we have to take a step back like we did before in the HR space and say broadly, how is AI going to impact every single area that we're dealing with, from the really potential positive to helping workers be in much more safe work environments with OSHA and using technology to see dangers before the human eye can see it, to the much more challenging role we face in how are we going to not only train the next generation of workers in this workforce development world to learn AI, to work alongside with AI, and hopefully not be replaced by AI in that side as well, but then also too, with our current workforce, which we can't forget about, how do we equip them with the skills to be able to develop these tools, to work alongside these tools, and more importantly, to make sure that every American worker is going to have a say in this new AI economy so they don't feel like they're being scared that this is going to be their robot replacement. And that's really important role for us, is how do we balance that innovation versus that job security for the US worker?
You know, it's interesting. If you look at the history of automation, and automation's been around a long time, the first sort of, a lot of the labor that was affected by sort of all prior forms of automation were basically more blue-collar labor, more physical labor and more repetitive task type of labor. But that's not the case now. I mean, now we're talking about a generation of automation, right? I mean, AI is actually, the automation of automation, right? It's software that writes itself. And the real headlines are really about the impact on cognitive labor, right? Lawyers and accountants and marketing professionals and just lots and lots of positions that have always seemed to be sort of safe from automation. And of course, there's good news too. There's the creation of new kinds of jobs. It's not just all about destruction of labor. It's about creating new industries, new companies. But all together, it is disruption, right? One way or the other. And what role does the government play in trying to smooth out that disruption?
And it was just in the beginning when I said that who are the areas that are going to get automated first by those physical robots, which is what I thought this whole industry was about. Okay, so logistics, manufacturers, some supply chain issues. But now, once generative AI came into the scene and now agentic AI, nobody's safe, including me, including you.
Yeah.
You have no chance. I have a little more chance. But in all seriousness, lawyers, accountants, copywriters, actors, everybody is now at risk here, and that wasn't the equation before. So there's so many different ways where we have to look at this. First and foremost, number one, putting my EEOC discrimination hat back on, who are going to be the most vulnerable groups? And if you look at a lot of the studies that have been done out there about who generative AI, agentic AI is going to impact, it's some of those lower earning jobs to begin with before you get to the knowledge worker jobs. And it's just going to have disproportionate impacts on certain groups over the others, like we've seen in other workforce displacement. And even too, another issue that we need to be thinking about is the impact it's going to have on older workers as well. You have a lot of people who have been doing their job the same way for 30 years, have gotten amazing performance review, have a happy career, and suddenly 30 years in your career saying, if you don't become a prompt engineer, you're not going to be able to continue in your job. Or the way that the software developers or employers are starting to institute this, if it's too complicated, it's not easy to use, you're going to lose a lot of those workers who may not be as familiar with this, and potentially, even though they can perform the job, others who just may be more familiar with the basic platforms may get a better opportunity, and that could lead to potential age discrimination there. And then even across the board, something we're seeing, when you talk about the workforce displacement and the fear of this, and this is why something we'll get to is that trust that needs to be built around this. And I talk about, trust within these AI systems. It's a theme throughout these conferences, but it's also trust from the developers and trust from the employers putting in there saying, we're going to use this for this purpose, and here's how it's going to make your life better. Here's how it's going to do the jobs, part of the job you may not like, and to make workplaces better, but you need to tell us that, and employees don't believe it. They see all the headlines, they come to these conferences and they say, we're developing these tools to essentially replace X amount of the workforce. You see the big studies saying, this tool is going to replace this industry specifically. So you're getting across all generations in the workforce, mental health issues, a fear of saying that, my employer is saying this is going to be a great tool, we're implementing this tool, we have this launch, but this is really my robot replacement, and I'm not going to use it, and I'm going to slow down your efforts to actually have these, in some cases, potentially life-saving software in there because of that fear. So much of this we need to take a step back at the Department of Labor and other agencies and say, let's explain it. Let's build that trust and confidence into these systems to show the workers, the employees who are ultimately going to be subject to these tools or going to be deploying these tools of how it's actually going to work and how they're a big part of their ecosystem. And it's a change in narrative that we need to see for everything here to be successful.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought up older workers, not only because I'm one of them, but also because it is a yeah, I know, what can you do? It's a multi-generational problem, right? I mean,
it's much more than that.
Yeah, right, so it affects everyone at every stage of their career. So we have young people. I have my daughter around here somewhere who's a junior at a local university, and are they training that generation to be AI ready? Not to my knowledge. For the most part, I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening in the high schools yet. I don't see it happening in the colleges. There are obviously some examples. There's exceptions, but across the board, it's not happening as much as it should, right? And so one of the things that could really change that is leadership from Washington. And it's been really great to see the Trump administration push forward with some executive orders that set the stage for a whole new sort of momentum towards AI in publication and AI in apprenticeships and really just retraining. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and obviously this is a huge area. This, this entire industry is an industry of the future where there's going to be a lot of high-paying, high-skilled jobs. And how do we address the talent shortage of that, which is a huge part of the Department of Labor's mission, aside from the civil and criminal law enforcement, but actually on the workforce development side to making sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to be able to participate in this program. So we now need to slow down and say, well, where are these jobs going and where is the lack of training that whether we don't have here, that other countries may be much more taking advantage of this. So within this first 100 days, President Trump issued 2 executive orders that are extremely relevant to the conversation here today. The first is around high-skilled, high-tech apprenticeships. The apprenticeship model is long and trusted, but when you think about apprenticeships, you don't think about this area at all. What do you think about when you think about apprenticeships? Traditional hands-on vocations, plumbing, HVAC, and those are great, and we need those. And those models have been very, very successful. And you haven't seen that in this area. And if you think about it, you don't need to go to a 4-year degree and then get a PhD at a brand name university to be able to learn how to code. Some of the most innovative coders in the world are entrepreneurs are all high school dropouts. Yeah. So why do we need to push people into 4-year degrees when they're ready for those jobs right out of high school? And that's what, and you think about this industry, how many kids in middle school, elementary school, high school have taught themselves how to code online, that know how to code. So why do they need to wait 4 years to start giving that innovation that's here to these companies? So the apprenticeship program, now by executive order, the president wants us to get over 1 million new apprenticeships every single year. And this is an area that's ripe to do it. If you think about the resources that these tech companies have, and the fact that even if you go to these schools, you start working at a big brand tech company, and then they retrain you the way they want. So why can't we do that for students coming right out of high school, learn fresh in there, and they can start earning money right away when they're 18 instead of doing a lot of college debt. And if students want to go to college, you can do both. You can earn part-time credit, you can not go to college. It's just we have to open the aperture on some of the thoughts about going to college versus going to apprenticeships, and the more desirable we can have it here, we can make that talent available that's out there right now in U.S. high schools across the country straight into this industry without delay and get that training and have them earn a career money too while they're learning from very big brand names. But that's a mindset shift. We have to get industry to buy into that, but the talent is here. And when we focus on, we're losing talent to overseas companies, other countries are starting to do this and being much more competitive than that. That's how we keep the U.S. jobs here. That's how we deal with the talent shortage. The second executive order that really plays into this, and I believe they go hand in hand, is the President's executive order on AI literacy and AI education. And this requires the Department of Labor, Department of Education, and the National Science Foundation to work together to start getting that curriculum into K through 12 schools in the United States and start teaching coding, just like you have to take a gym class or a math class, you're going to start learning AI across the board. And not just in our K through 12, but also in our community colleges and for the Department of Labor that runs all the state workforce agencies, that gives out billions of dollars every year to those who are going up for unemployment insurance once they lose your jobs. What about training them and training them into how to get some of these high-skilled jobs at the state level as well? So it's a really big effort by the Trump administration. by these 2 executive orders to deal with the talent shortage, to get people working right away in jobs that they really want. But that's not going to happen without industry buy-in. And that's something that we've really been, and I know you're committed to it. And
AI literacy is the foundation. I mean, if you don't have basic understanding and awareness, and quite frankly, some countries around the world, like Finland, have done a better job of making that sort of a national priority early on, right? Just AI literacy for all, right? It's not about STEM. It's not about learning to code. It's just having basic understanding. Because you talk about fear. Well, you fear things you don't understand.
Right.
And the more you understand its risks, its limitations, what it's good at, what it's not good at, the less you fear it, because then it becomes something you can harness, right? Sure. And so that's a super important.
And we want to do it in a much more sophisticated way. Like, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports into the Department of Labor, and all of our the administration discussing it with CEOs and boards about where those talent shortages are in the United States and why they have to rely potentially on foreign labor, why they have to rely on the H-visa programs, or why they have to offshore jobs. It's because we don't have those skills and talent here. Okay, so tell us specifically what those jobs are that you're not able to find U.S. workers for, that there is a talent shortage of, and then let us redeploy all this money we have that we give to the states, that we give to universities, that we give to public high school systems, and exactly train them on there. You talk about cybersecurity. It's a huge industry, and there's so many jobs opening. So that's something we can start teaching in high schools. That's something we can start teaching through apprenticeship programs to community colleges. So instead of just saying in the aggregate of saying, oh, we need to deal with the workforce shortage, we need to teach AI literacy in schools, that's great. But I want to get really granular. And I want to talk to the leaders in this room and the companies saying, here's our biggest need. Here's where we cannot get talent for. Okay? Well, guess what? We run the Department of Labor. We run the Department of Education. We can start training for that now, today, but that takes that buy-in from everyone, this alternative way to education is something that we all believe in, and we're going to convince the students to do this right away because it's going to get you to that pathway in not only that higher earning career, but also you're really going to enjoy it because you're going to be working at a brand name company when you're 18 years old.
That's right. So I've been involved in sort of the rise of this idea called sovereign AI kind of from day one, and one of the key themes of sovereign AI is the idea of investing in your country to build your domestic to boost your domestic competitiveness, right? And you need all these different things, right? Labor is one of them, talent, right? Infrastructure is another. But one thing that's very clear is government can't do it on its own. It requires a public-private collaboration along all of these dimensions. I mean, some of the biggest sort of Stargate and big, sort of infrastructure deals you see announced, these are all government, sort of government leaning in with private sector doing these things. All by themselves, it doesn't work. So this is true for labor too, right? This is true for these things that we're talking about. The industry has to step up.
Absolutely. And we can put it out there. We could say we need to hit 1 million apprenticeships, that we have all this workforce training. Well, it's an exexecutive order, so it's a demand.
Oh,
so
for you, it's Trump. Sorry, it's a demand.
I'd like to keep my job, so let's get 1 million apprenticeships.
That's right.
But in all seriousness, it's really that collaboration, talking together and saying, we can give you the infrastructure. We can give you the program to get students into apprenticeships where they earn while they learn, while they get a certificate, while they get that training registered through the government, but you have to be committed to, as another way of recruiting, as another way of reskilling, as another way of upskilling, to work with us on that side too. And I think that's a difficult part, and it takes that collaboration, but as you said, when government and business come together in a lot of different areas, it works. But here we're dealing with the future, we're dealing with a whole generation of kids in high school and in college, reading everything we're discussing and thinking that they're gonna have no career, and they're gonna, everything that they dreamed of is gonna be done by ChatGPT or agentic AI, and we have to say, well, no, you're gonna be in control of that. You're going to be one designing, developing, and employing that, and you're going to be ones coming up with telling these advanced systems what to do. We just need to get you the training, and you need to tell us what you're interested in, so we can then go find the industries and companies to buy into this program.
And what's so ironic about that is that even though the systems have never been more advanced, I mean, we are at an age of, we have the most complex software, the most complex hardware that we've ever seen. At the same time, it's never been more accessible, because the language of AI is human language. It's a natural language interface. You can talk to these systems, you can engage them, right? You just have to know how to do it, and then you have to want to do it, and then you have to have an industry has to provide a path where that enables you to then take that knowledge of that skill and then make a living on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then what do you need industry to do specifically? You mentioned identify skills like cyber, and that's a great one, because I'm sure we have open cyber positions, and we need to defend our country. What are there other areas within? We talk tech is a big word. Are there other areas that you want to see the industry step in?
Yeah, it's really, taking a step back. It's not just for, we're obviously at a tech conference talking about the tech,
Yeah.
but the registered apprenticeship program is much broader.
Fair enough.
From, where it's been and where it can go. So not just, saying, okay, for a tech company, we're offering this apprenticeships for those who can code. It's across the board. It's for all different positions, all vacancies, whether they're high skilled or not, knowledge worker or not. This is just an alternative pathway to get in the workforce that so many people feel like they can't get in right now.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is that there's people who've gotten 4-year degrees and are working at a tech company. They're saying, I can't sit in front of a desk anymore. This is for me. I'm going to go become an electrical engineer through an apprenticeship program that will allow me to then pay off my student debt and learn this new trade, which then is going to come back end to other jobs we need, because, and I know the Secretary of Energy will be here, a broader part of the Trump administration, whether it's bringing back manufacturing or being, the leader in energy, it all goes hand in hand, because all these manufacturing facilities that are being built are going to need high-skilled jobs as well to operate, not just the building the infrastructure of it, but then operating it across the board. So it's really every industry, every job category. It's just an alternate, additional way to get skilled workers. And I think, the reception for the companies that have engaged in this has been really high, and the retention rate too for some of these workers. If you're coming in and they're paying you to train and they're teaching you the industry, you're going to get much more loyal workers as well.
Yeah, 100%. So at the end of the day, I'd like to just test your optimism level. So there are a lot of headlines out there that, if you look at the social media channels, and some of them are scary, right? Some of the headlines are not so scary. Some headlines will say, you're not going to lose your job to AI, you'll lose your job to someone who uses AI, right? Which means, figure it out, make it as a tool for you. So be more competitive, get with the times. Others, including recently the CEO of Anthropic, that came out and said, he thinks 30-40% of all white-collar jobs are at risk. Big headlines like that are kind of scary. Where do you think it's going to land?
I think it goes back into the culture of that company. Again, AI is not making new employment decisions. There's only a finite amount of in my space, only a finite amount of employment decisions: hiring, firing, wages, training, benefits, promotions, terminations, etc. Or even doing the job, right? There's just generally a way to do the job. And now AI is essentially doing those tasks, augmenting those tasks. So a lot of it is going to be in the culture of the company. And that hasn't changed from what the cultures of those companies are to begin with, because it's only going to amplify the existing culture that they have. So that's why I want to go back to so much of it for the workforce, for that employee trust, for that implementation, is saying, what are your current practices and policies right now? Have you already been displacing workers through automation, through offshoring, through other ways? Or have you kept those workers along the times to reskill them and upskill them with the way your company's going too? So you can't really, like you said, blame it on AI. Because there is somebody there, whether it's the board, whether it's the C-suite, whether it's the managers, who are deciding whether to implement that. And that decision, whether to automate workers, whether to have them in the loop, that's really a cultural thing from the company. So taking a step back and saying, what is that workplace culture? And is that a place where you want to be, as an employee, as an applicant, to say how you want to be subject to that? So I think it's a hard question to answer, and it really shines a light on that employee culture and that trust, which is needed for any workplace decisions too. So I'm a believer in all this. I really think it can help the workforce significantly. I think it can make people enjoy their jobs much more and be much more effective, and be able to create and have some of that American innovation that the president wants back by moving some of those remedial tasks that people are burdened with to AI. But again, it's company specific, and that's what we really need to get the message across.
The other way to come at this is you have the large established companies and how they're dealing with this disruption. And then you have the startups. You have sort of this new crop of new generation of companies. And what's so interesting is that, and this was another quote recently, and again, it's a little dramatic, but there is some truth to it, which is we are getting close, we're entering that era where you could have a one-person, $1 billion company. Like, I mean, it's almost it's almost unimaginable when you think about it, but we're there, by the way, we're there. You've got a company like Cursor, okay, which has, I don't even know exactly, but I think it's like 50 employees or some very, very small number, just did their latest round at $9 billion in market value, right? So how is it possible that you have these small companies, right? Of course, properly leveraging AI, you can create value in ways before. And so the opportunity there is not so much disruption to existing companies, but the potential to create a whole new ecosystem of smaller companies creating unbelievable value.
Right.
And so, and again, they may not need to hire as much, but there could be many more of them. And so it's just, I think the general nature of this workplace
optimism versus fear.
Yeah, optimism versus fear. There's just so much more opportunity for value creation. Right. Not value destruction, but value creation. But people have to see that.
That's where we come in. If they don't have the skills, starting from middle school at this point, through high school, through college, through apprenticeships, through their workforce, development training, they're never even going to feel like they have that opportunity.
That's right.
So we want to level the playing field and give everyone who wants to get a chance to engage in this, to become literate, to have that chance, so they don't feel that if their company is going to be replacing them, that the skills I learned, I can now go create one of those billion-dollar companies by myself.
That's right.
And I think that really comes from that institutional knowledge that we play a very big part in now in gearing some of this workforce development funds, training that's available at the state and federal level into this field where it generally has only been led by large companies, and those have been internal modules for their own employees once you get there, not to the general public, and that's what we have the obligation to do.
Yeah, it comes from the knowledge, and it comes from a much more intense level of public-private collaboration with policy leadership in Washington, tech and non-tech firms coming together regardless, right, for the better, for the betterment of our population. Absolutely. So anyway, Honorable Keith Sonderling, thank you for coming today and taking out of your very busy schedule.
How often do you get two Keiths?
Two Keiths on the same stage. I really thank you for the conversation. Thank you for your leadership, and look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks for your friendship.
All right, thanks, pal. All right, thank you.